Okay, let's take a minute amid the conversation of the coronavirus pandemic, which is as traumatic as it is insane, and let's talk about economic recovery. We have two warring sides, and frankly, I don't understand where one of them is coming from. You see, the Republicans have started talking about how they want to spend responsibly, even though the vast consensus among economists is that we need nearly $9 trillion to bail us out of this crisis, to keep the economy going, to even create the foundation from which we can recover. And yet, they refused to pass a new stimulus package on the grounds that it would increase the debt too much. It's a little bit like telling somebody with 3 bullet wounds who's also morbidly obese that they should get on the treadmill. Let's focus on the bullet wounds first. You see, we need to stop talking about the national debt, at least for now. I'm not saying it's not important. I'm not saying that someday we shouldn't try to pay down that debt, and we should, sooner rather than later. And we should be concerned when we add to it. But in a crisis like this, we need to keep our country and the world going. And the national debt is actually a little more complex than you would think it is. You see, the debt is, in fact, money we owe other people. We put out bonds and people buy those bonds, and we have to pay interest on those bonds, like any debt. But people keep buying those bonds. And who are those people? Mostly other countries. Why? Because we're good for it. And because they have to. You see, back after World War II, we created the Bretton Woods system, which made the dollar the reserve currency of the US because Europe was in shambles and Asia wasn't the powerhouse that it is now. And while Bretton Woods is no longer in effect, the dollar is, for all intents and purposes, essentially still the reserve currency of the world. Other currencies simply are not strong enough to compete with it. What that means is for the last 80 years, people have been buying the dollar debt as reserve currency and holding on to it, which means that when new dollar debt comes up, they need to keep buying it or their existing dollar value of debt goes down. Because if you're selling something and people stop buying for it, demand dries up, then the value of that asset as a whole decreases. So if people are holding a lot of American debt, as many countries are, they have to keep buying American debt to keep its value up. Of course, it's a smart investment because we've always paid it back. We've never defaulted on our debt. But it's also something they have to do. They're holding a gun to their own heads because if they stop buying the debt, the value of their existing debt will go down. And the only person who comes out ahead then is us in not paying it back. So let's take, for example, the debt that we'd have to sell. China, for example, holds trillions of dollars of our debt. China has to keep buying that debt. Europe, in the same way, holds hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars of our debt. They have to keep buying that debt. And what do we do with that money when we sell those bonds? We use it to fuel our economy. And our economy then goes and buys products from around the world, including from, you guessed it, places like China and Europe. It's a circular pattern. They buy our debt, we use that debt to fuel our economy, and then through our economy, we buy their products and fuel their economies. You see, trade deficits aren't just lopsided averages of how much money we spend on their products versus how much money they spend on our products. They're only one half of the equation. The other half of the equation is our debt and the fact that they keep buying it. So transparently, I get the debt concerns and we should worry about it over the long term. But as long as we can continue to make our quote unquote national credit card payments, we can rest assured that the rest of the world will continue to buy that debt and allow us the freedom to figure out a way out of this crisis. And then when it's all sorted and said and done, we can have a second serious conversation. But the last time I checked, we're not going to get to have the conversation about debt if we don't have the conversation first about how to save America from this crisis we're in right now, as opposed to the one that's 50 years down the road. Thanks for tuning in to The World According to Craig. Life can feel crazy sometimes, but that's just because no one gave us the tools of how to make sense of it. I'm here to help.